This is part 2 of the Nextpeer Pogmatch tutorial. So first let's go to the main menu and create a button for the multiplayer mode. I'm going to copy the single player button and then change it into a multiplayer button. Remove the old action. Use Ctrl Drag to create a button action for the multiplayer button. So in the action function, I'm going to start the game with a multiplayer configuration. Before we do that, let's go into gameconfig.h and add a new declaration for the new game mode. So I'm going to add a new enum here called game mode multiplayer. Now I'm going to go back to the main menu and basically just copy what the single player configuration is and then modify it. So I'm going to call this one a multiplayer config, and let's go up here. This is where the single player config is defined. Let's copy that and then change it to multiplayer. And we want our game duration to be 120 seconds. Go to the Nextpeer developer site and register our new tournament. So once you're there, go select our game, OpenPogmatch. Click on Manage Tournaments. This is where you can add new tournaments. I've already added one here, so let's edit the details. In here you can set the title of the tournament. I'm going to call it 2-minute challenge. This is the time limit for the tournament, so it's 120 seconds. And then the type of the tournament, the highest score will win. This is where you can customize the image and any loading text. So we're done. Update. Then let's go back to Xcode and handle the callbacks from Nextpeer. First thing we need to do though is to launch the Nextpeer dashboard. So I'm going to do it in main menu here when the multiplayer button is pressed. Launch Nextpeer dashboard. Because the Nextpeer dashboard handles the beginning of the game, we need to go to Game Manager to delay the start of game until the callback is called from the Nextpeer delegate. So let's go in here in the Game Manager new game function. Let's not start the game yet. So I'm going to put a check here to say should start game is no for multiplayer mode. And then recall that we have a delegate function here from Nextpeer delegate where it starts the tournament. So this is where we want to do the start game. And when the tournament ended, we want to tell Game Manager that it has finished the game. We should also change the Game Manager's timer to get its time from Nextpeer instead of tracking it locally. So in Game Manager, go to the update function. For multiplayer mode, we want the time remaining to come from Nextpeer. Then we need to report our scores to Nextpeer. So let's go to Stats Manager where Pogmatch handles score reporting. Include the nextpeer.h file and find the place where it reports score. So this is the function. And in multiplayer mode, we want to report score for the current tournament to Nextpeer. After that, we need to remove several things from the game that is specific to the single player mode. So the first thing is in single player mode, there's a little time boost added to the game when the player makes a match. So we want to remove that. that happens in the match cards function in Game Manager. So there's the little time boost here, and we're gonna add code to not do that in multiplayer mode. Then we want to remove the single player postgame screen because Nextpeer handles the postgame UI. So let's go to Game View Controller and find where the postgame screen is being shown. Show postgame. This is where it is. And then make sure that it doesn't happen in multiplayer mode. The last thing we need to do is to handle the player exiting from a Nextpeer tournament. And there are three possibilities here. The first one is through exiting Nextpeer's dashboard. So for that, we need to implement the Nextpeer dashboard did disappear, and then we want to tell the game that it needs to exit. But we want to also make sure that Nextpeer is not in tournament because the dashboard would disappear as it goes into a tournament. So we want to say Nextpeer is not currently in tournament, and then we should exit the game. The second possibility is when the player presses the exit button on the top right corner. When they do that, the game would call exit requested in Game Manager. And at this time, we want to tell Nextpeer that the player has forfeited the tournament. So if it is multiplayer mode, we want to report forfeit for current tournament and then exit the game. The third possibility is basically when the app becomes inactive. That's when the player presses the home button or the power button or they get a call. In that case, Nextpeer's behavior is to disconnect the player from the tournament immediately. So the game has to also then push the player back out into the main menu when that happens. So let's go into Game View Controller here and find the function where it handles that. We want to request the game manager to exit. Now run the game and go to multiplayer. So this is the Nextpeer dashboard, and as you can see, our tournament is up here, 2-minute challenge. So right now by default, Nextpeer's notification shows up at the top of the screen. So it right now covers up the score and the time bar in Pogmatch. We can actually change that when we initialize Nextpeer. So here are all the available notification positions. Now we're gonna go to the app delegate and add a new dictionary for the settings. For the object value, I'm going to use the notification bottom enum. And then for the key, the Nextpeer setting notification position. Then in the initialize function, we're going to change it to call the version that has the settings and pass in settings as the parameter. So now run the game. As you can see now, the notification is at the bottom of the screen. So that's it. This concludes this portion of the tutorial. You now have a basic multiplayer mode in Pogmatch using Nextpeer.